if you just walked in, or if you didn't get a chance to, there's only a few copies of the printed handouts. I don't know, James, where you put them. If you have the ability, either smartphone, this is cool, you actually can have your phone out during this clinic. If you have a smartphone or a tablet, just go ahead and grab the QR code on an iPhone or iPad. You can just use your regular camera, pull that up, and there's an online version of the handout. It's a little bit more comprehensive than the printed version. It has more of what I'm going to talk about because I had no limits for how long it could be. Also, all of the apps that I'm going to talk about are all hyperlinked in there. So if you're looking at them, you can literally just click on them and just have access to it. So I don't. Is everybody good with that, or we still got? I see a couple cameras up. Looks like we're all good. Okay, so a little bit about me. I work at Redwood Middle School and Thousand Oaks High School, out in Thousand Oaks. I am the assistant director of the band program at the middle school. Also, with a separate teacher, the orchestra program at the middle school. I'm assistant director of the marching band at the high school, and I'm also a low brass player. Teach a lot of private students, and I work with a lot of marching bands in the area. I write drill for a lot of schools. So I kind of come from a lot of different backgrounds. And what I'm going to be talking about today is not only like apps. I mean, anyone can search the App Store. You can find a bunch of apps and go, oh, this is kind of cool. There's some ones that I'm going to show you that I use. There's a lot, and some things that seem like they overlap, but that I'll use for different purposes. But also just kind of getting you thinking of how you can use them in a classroom setting, in a private lesson setting, or getting your students to go home and use them. There's just kind of a lot to it. So kind of first few disclaimers. In terms of iPhones and iPads, that's my thing. I'm actually a PC guy when it comes to computers. But most of the apps I went through and the ones I've used are for iPhone. So obviously Apple. If you're allergic to Apple, there's some things that are available for Google. I've gone through and listed in the handout. It says what's available also on the Google Play Store. And on the online version of the handout, they are hyperlinked to the Google Play Store, so if they are available. I talked to a number of people I know trying to get alternative ones that are only available for Android, and a lot of my friends that have Android phones didn't really use the apps as much as what I use with my iPhone. So hopefully if you're an Android user, you'll still get some stuff out of this, and some of the stuff, a lot of it overlaps a little bit. So the title of the clinic is called App-etizers Before Lunch. I presented this about a year ago at the SASBOA conference, and they asked me to come up with a catchy title. That's what they say, it's got to be fun, and so when I was asked to do this, I said, what time is it? They said, right before lunch. Perfect. So we're going to start with kind of just some small appetizers, mostly for iPhone. Some of these things are, especially now, there's more and more that's overlapping. We're coming up with new versions for tablets that have more features. First one I'm going to talk about is Tonal Energy Tuner. If you don't have this app, you should really check this out. It's about, I think it's in the handout it says how much, it's $3 or $4. It is probably the most versatile tuning app that I use, and it's really not just a tuner anymore. It started off that way. It's still called Tonal Energy Tuner, but it has a lot of other really kind of neat features. Obviously, the students love being able to tell when they're in tune because it just gives them a happy face. One of the newer features of it actually is the longer you hold the happy face, the bigger it gets. And it goes like this. It goes about from halfway, it goes, and the happy face changes a little bit, kind of like one of Dr. Stoffel's conducting expressions that he uses in his own song. One of the really neat things, how many of you know what a Harmony Director keyboard is? A couple people? Okay. The Harmony Director is a Yamaha keyboard. I think the whole package runs about $1,000, but it can actually play just intonation chords, where you can set it in a key and you can play a chord and it will lower the third and raise the fifth. And it's amazing for teaching intonation. I know CSUN, I think, has one. I remember Dr. Stoffel got it while I was here. A number of bands I know, I don't have one at my school. We don't have anything that expensive technology-wise. But it's really neat for teaching kids what you can do intonation-wise and what things are supposed to sound like. And this does something similar, not quite as extensive, but it can do it for a lot less than $1,000. So I'm going to kind of turn this on here so you can hear. I'm going to do, let's see here, it's just a game. Okay, you see that chord? beats in the sound? So what changed? It's in tune. It lowered, I changed it to just intonation, it lowered the third 14 cents flatter and raised the fifth. You can play this out over a speaker for your students. It also will show them, if you change it to just intonation mode, they can actually tune the chord, and it will show you that you're in tune, and it'll show a little indicator that says 14 cents flat to equal tempo tuning. So it's a really neat way to teach in-tune chords. Now, it won't get into chord extensions, when you're doing some of the more sophisticated kinds of chords, but for basic chord tuning, major thirds, major fifths, it's really neat. Another really neat way to use it as an individual player with a private student is if you put on headphones, you can have it play out, say play the root and the fifth, and then have them play the third. The tuner will then, if they play the third where they think it's supposed to be in tune, then they look at the tuner. The tuner will tell them if they're in tune with the perfectly tuned chord, not the equal tempered chord. So that's kind of one of the things I love. You can use it in that mode in the regular tuner, in the playing out pitches. So for example, in this mode right now, if I play in just intonation, if I'm playing the E, this is a little bit flat. It's not, see if you can hear this difference. Hear that? So I'm changing it from equal temper to just intonation on this app, which is really cool. Like I said, it doesn't do everything a Harmony Director keyboard does, but for about $4, it's a lot better than the $1,000 keyboard in terms of being able to get started with that type of thing. Another really kind of neat thing, you can set it for transposing instruments. It's when we're teaching, especially I teach beginning band, beginning strings. Strings don't have to worry about this, but for band, at the very beginning, it's really hard to get kids to understand, okay, I play French horn, and I'm tuning my concert F, but I'm tuning my written F, but on the tuner it says B flat. They just get really confused. So most of the tuners now that are available as apps, you can switch it. So you can just select what your transposition is, what instrument you're playing, because it gets very confusing at the beginning. Later on, they start learning, especially as you're using terms in class like concert B flat. What's a concert B flat? They know it's F. But I don't think any of my beginning horn players, they know what concert B flat is, but if I said, can you play a concert C sharp, they have no idea what that is. So we talked about the tone generator, the metronome. This actually just got updated literally the day after I did this presentation last year. So I came out and I did this presentation here about a month after the SSBO8 conference, and I want you to check something out. I use this thing, this has become my new favorite app in terms of tempo metronomes. Check this out. So that was a pretty complicated sequence, wasn't it? That was actually the opener of the field show at the high school I teach at. It was a piece called Metroplex by Robert Sheldon, and we marched that. How many of you either taught marching band or been in a marching band ever? Okay, you're all familiar with the Dr. Beat, right? Okay, so the Dr. Beat is great, but it can't do odd meters. So that just switched back and forth between two different versions of 7/8, 6/8, 3/4, and 4/4 in a sequence. And we actually, once I discovered, they updated this last year, literally the day after I did my presentation, started playing around with it, and I had my drum majors at the high school playing around with it. Now if you notice, if you know the Dr. Beat, that sounded like a Dr. Beat. They call that sound the Doctor. And you can use that sound set. We actually programmed our entire field show into this and didn't use a Dr. Beat at all, because it had every single time change. You can change your count off, however you want the count off to be. In concert, usually your count off is in the meter you're going to play. In marching band, you tend to use a count off in 4/4 because all the non-musicians, the color guard dancers, things like that, they're just 5, 6, 7, 8, and go. And you can change it however you want. So we literally never used a Dr. Beat all semester last year. All the drum majors had it programmed into the show, and you can label it. So movement 1, movement 2, movement 3, starting at measure 21 or starting at page 15, or however you want to label it. You can start at all those different various places. You can program in a crescendo, a cellarando or ritardando. You can program those in. It literally became just like one of the most awesome tools we had for teaching. And obviously you can use that for concert. I had another setup here. I put in, how many of you have ever played Vesuvius by Kelly? Right? It's kind of an unusual version of 9/8. If you've never played the piece before, it's in 9/8, but it goes ba 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 ba. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And you can program that in here. So you can use it for a concert. Now obviously it's pretty sophisticated. You know, if you just need a plain old basic metronome for somebody to go keep in time in 4/4, you know, that might be a little bit much. But it's super useful, and it's the same app. I use this all the time when I'm teaching privately. How many of you have ever heard the term when you're talking about tone quality of playing like a brick of sound? Has anyone ever heard that? You want the sound to just start, go, and stop. So if I'm looking at that, that's pretty close to a brick of sound. So this has an analysis mode where it shows you the waveform. For example, if it's similar to if you're recording on Pro Tools or Logic or something like that, it's showing you the waveform of your sound. So I can use that to say, okay, this is what a brick of sound really means, right? We can talk about it, we can use the analogy, but you can actually show a student this is what you sound like. This here is showing different articulations. What articulation do you think these would be right here? Staccato. How about this?
Legato.
How about an accent, right? Louder at the beginning of the note, and then a little bit of a decrescendo, louder at the beginning of the note, a little bit of a decrescendo. So that's bum, bum. So that's showing them what an accent should look like. Now that little orange line is the intonation over time. So on this brick note, you can see that the pitch, now the very beginning of the note, it has to actually select and figure out what note it is you're playing. But if you can see, the note went a little flat and it kind of hovered right in tune, and it shows you the numbers that are a little hard to see here. It's actually showing you how sharp or flat you are over time while you're holding that note. So you're getting this really kind of interesting. You see how your tone quality note is holding. Is it a particularly solid note, and then in terms of volume, but also is it a solid note in terms of intonation, and then how's the release? And you can show them that. So some schools have these really neat setups with, I know some schools, some band directors have an Apple TV connected to their overhead projector, and they will literally project this onto the screen. Some schools don't have that setup, but your magnetic case on an iPad just sticks to the whiteboard. So you could put on a tuner or an app that you need, whatever, let's see, if I put this app on, you can put it on where, hey look, we can see, what am I talking? Yes, my beautiful out of tune talking, but you can put it up, and then make it a little bit bigger. So not ideal compared to say projecting it like this, but if you don't have the ideal technology set up in your classroom, which a lot of schools don't, you can make do, you can do things like that. I've actually taken my iPad at my school. We don't have that kind of thing with our class, but we do have what's called a document camera. It's like basically an overhead projector with a little camera, and I'll put this right underneath it. But that's really useful. I use this part of it. I'll use this, I'll use this a lot when I'm showing a class what things should be, but I use it more when I'm teaching my low brass students privately, just in a practice session. This is another part of the analysis mode where you can actually see the sound wave. You can look at the overtone series that you're playing. The really big thing, I'll explain overtones to students with this, but what I like to do is if a student has a bad tone quality, they can see the difference between my tone quality, which will have clear overtones and not a lot of noise down here, assuming you're in a relatively quiet space, or they can see one that has a lot more distortion. They can see that there's a difference in the tone quality, and they can see where it is. It's also kind of a neat thing for students to show them. For example, I'm a euphonium player. If I play my tuning concert B flat on euphonium, and you take that same exact note, the same octave, and play it on a trombone, a bassoon, or a tenor saxophone, they can actually see the difference in the sound. They'll see the difference in the overtone series. It's a really quick, easy way to explain why we sound the way we do, how do we sound different. And it's kind of a neat way to display that. iStrobosoft tuner. How many of you ever used a strobe tuner before? Okay. Anyone ever use this app? James? This is the tuner I use the most. I know that the trombone teacher here, Andy Malloy, he has it. I've seen a lot of professional musicians use it. It's accurate to within a tenth of a cent. And I use it, it's a little hard. Sometimes students get a little messed up reading it at first, but you can blow up the screen to pretty much the full size of your phone or your iPad or whatever. It's $10, which seems like a little bit much for an app. But a Peterson strobe tuner, the actual mechanical ones, the cheapest one I think is around $50, and they go up to like hundreds of dollars. It's a lot of professionals use it. I use it probably more often than anything for actually tuning students. I use the tonal energy tuner a lot when I'm teaching, and especially with the younger kids, but like when I'm really tuning an ensemble, or I'm really tuning my students or my own horn, I use this one. This one is another tuner, and it's like, okay, watch, another tuner. The cool thing about this one, I actually don't really use this as a tuner, but the neat thing about the display on this one is the fact that it shows the note they're playing on an actual staff. Most tuners don't do that. And so it's really neat. I had this one when I took the screenshot set to French horn. Why? Because French horns miss every note all the time, right? Right? And especially if they're trying to learn, for example, when they get up in the staff, C, D, and E, you can play all three of those notes the same fingering. How do you know which one you're hitting? Well, this tuner is telling you not only, I'll tell you what note you're playing, but this is actually showing them on a staff. And for a beginner, that is so helpful for them to connect what they're doing, what they're hearing, and what they see on the musical staff. So if they have a sheet of paper in front of them, and they see, I'm supposed to be playing a D, and then they look on there and it's not the same thing, it's really easy for them to tell. It's free. There is a pro version, which I've never checked out, and because the actual tuning needle is down here, but the display of the note is up here, it's a little weird going back and forth. I don't really use it as a tuner. I use it as a note recognition tool, and I think it's really great for that. And it's free. You can select every concert band instrument and orchestra instrument that's commonly seen in schools. You're not going to find some weird instrument like the C bass trumpet or an ophicleide in F, but you can find everything else that you would see normally. This is one I use with my orchestra all the time. So I started teaching middle school orchestra about 3 years ago as the assistant director. They basically threw me in. It was like dive in head first and go, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Working with a string teacher that did. There's a head director for the band program and a head director for the string program. And when I started working with the beginners, obviously what's the biggest thing? How many of you taken string methods so far? Or are string players? Okay. Playing in tune on a string instrument, right? It's like, where does everything go? And then even when you get it, okay, great, I have a tape, I put my finger on the tape. Am I in tune? No, because my finger is 0.2 millimeters that way. So the thing about this is basically a game, and it plays two pitches. And it will play a note, and it'll play another note. And then you have to tell it whether it's sharp or flat, whether it's high or low. There's a little slider. You slide it up if you think the note's too high, you slide it down if you think the note is too low. They start off literally half step apart, and they get by about the fifth level, you're plus or minus about 2 cents. So the way I use it in the classroom is I will just have them give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down for which way they think the note is, if it's too high or too low. It only plays the note once. There is no way to replay it, which is cool because it forces them to be quiet, which is a great classroom management thing at the beginning of class. If they come in noisy, which if you ever around a middle school band, they're always noisy, they come in and you have to force them to be quiet. They've actually forced themselves to do it because they want to do it. And even sometimes when they react out loud, they get one right, they're like, yes, they miss the next one. And they get really good at it. And a lot of times I'll have them do it with their eyes closed, because what happens is some kids just see everyone else with their thumb up, and they go like that. So you do it with their eyes closed. You can do it as a written test. All right, I'm going to play you 10 numbers and have you do it. Now obviously you can do this on an instrument as well, but you don't have to. For me, I am an absolutely horrid violinist. I struggled through my string methods class and somehow managed to get a good grade, but you don't want to hear me play violin, so I'm not going to. But the app can do this for me. You can set for high, medium, or low pitches. I keep it the same, meaning upper octave notes or really low notes or somewhere in the middle. You can do it changing. I keep it the same because it's really hard for the students to keep shifting around. Here's a high one, here's a really low one. I just keep it around the same and just in the middle, and it seems to work really well with them. This is another kind of a tuning app. It was originally designed for guitar, but it has some really neat features. Obviously, you can see here it's showing you which way to tune the string. You can set it specifically for violin, viola, cello, bass, and it basically is it's showing you what each note, like, okay, these are the strings. It has a bunch of alternate tunings for guitar and stuff like that, which I don't really use it that much as a tuner, but it has kind of some neat modes. This one here can actually tune multiple notes at the same time. So I was at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago a few years ago when somebody told me about this, and I was sitting next to the Westlake High School band director when he had found this app, and we were listening to the Sibelius Academy from Finland band warm up before they did a session, and we were listening to them play chords and looking at all the notes of the chords at the same time. which was really kind of cool. It's neat if you're playing in an ensemble, a quartet. It's not the most accurate thing using the line as the tuning, but it's a really neat way for kids to, if they're playing in small duets or trios, to kind of see all of that at the same time. This is a really neat sort of music theory part of it. If you play notes, it will tell you what chords you could be playing. So if you see it has a list up at the top of the pitches and then some possible chords. And then, so for example, if I play a D and an F, well, it could be a D minor chord, or it could be part of a B flat major chord. Notice here that the D is a much bigger square than the B flat. If I play my D in tune and my F slightly sharp, about 16th sharp, it's more likely to be a minor chord. If the D is flat, like say 14th flat, it's more likely to be a B flat major chord. So the app is actually determining, based on the tuning, which is the more likely choice. It's pretty neat if you're trying to ensemble, or you're trying to analyze something or get kids to understand. It's really kind of fun to watch that and get them to understand tuning. Oh, if I change this tuning, the app is thinking it's a different chord. Tempo used to be my favorite metronome. It's still in the PowerPoint. It does a lot of the same things that the tonal energy tuner app does. I don't use it as much anymore because the TE tuner app just does all of it. But it can do mixed meters. You see, it's set up here for 6/8. You can select different accent versions, different subdivisions of 7/8 and 5/8 and things like that. And you can pick. This is a nice one for students if they have a piece of music that is listed with a specific tempo, like a marking like adagietto, and they don't really know what adagietto is. It gives them a tempo range. Do I always agree with them? They're a range. It's a suggestion, but it kind of helps them to figure that out. Scales. We all love scales. We all love learning scales, right? Right. Students pretty much don't like learning scales, most of them. I think 99% of my students, I have 20 private students right now, I have one that loves his scales. He also happens to be the best player I teach. I wonder why. This app is literally a scale dictionary. Common scales, major, minor, and then you get into like jazz scales, world scales, modes. I mean, you can literally look up an Indian scale, a Hindustani scale, Spanish scales, different forms of minor, different, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, mixed Lydian, all these different things. And it shows you not only it shows you the notation on your staff. You can pick what staff you want or which clef. Shows you the notes, shows you the names of the notes, shows you the intervals of the notes, gives you playback with a count off so you can play with it. But I mean, there's scales on there I've never even tried to go and figure out what they are, because there's so many. It's got bebop scales and all sorts of blues, and you name it. If you've heard it, it's probably in there. It can play them back in 1 or 2 octaves. It's pretty. I use it when I'm teaching. I try to get some of my private students to look it up. You can just drag the notes around, pick different octaves for playback and everything like that. I mean, it's literally a scale dictionary. It can transpose for whatever instrument you need it for. Music Theory Pro. Okay, we've all gone through music theory class, especially your first time when you're trying to figure out what's a major third, what's a minor third, all those kinds of things. This app was actually written by a music theory professor at USC. And the reason he wrote it was originally because his students had a hard time practicing these things on their own. It's like, if you go sit down on the piano on your own and you play a major third, okay, what did I just play? Well, I played a major third. You can't quiz yourself. So basically, it quizzes you on everything that you would pretty much hit in a first semester music theory class. It does intervals, it does chord recognition, it does scale recognition, all as ear training. It also does tempo recognition, which is great if you are going to be a conductor and you want to know, all right, what tempo is this? Oh, I think this is 120. Let's see. Yep, okay, that's 120. So it's basically just, it keeps score. And you can select what you want to do. You can select your level. So when I'm teaching my private students and I wanted them to start getting introduced to ear training and understanding intervals, just like we do in our musicianship class, I will go in and I'll set it. I can go into the settings and say, I only want it to play perfect fourths, perfect fifths, and octaves. Okay, great. Now I'm going to add a major third. Okay, now I'm going to add my seconds, or whatever order you want. And it does some compound intervals, and you can do that with chords. You can do major, minor, diminished, augmented. It gets into some jazz dominant seventh chords, things like that. And it will just play them back, and you have to guess which one. And it keeps score for you. It's really cool, and it is pretty addictive. Most of my students that have the app as my private students, they use it even when I don't remind them to. They kind of find it fun. And it takes like it's like 10 minutes a day. It's extremely useful for that. This is kind of the interface is what it looks for. Like, in addition to doing the ear training, it also does the written version. So you can see here, it's got, here is the interval recognition, like we would do, like I said, in a musicianship class. So it's got the written and the oral training. The only thing it doesn't make you do is sight sing. Chord stuff. This is just a great, cheap little app. It's a flashcard maker for beginners, especially if they're learning note reading. I have one trumpet player right now at the beginning band level. Great kid, super awesome attitude, and she still has the hardest time reading music notation. And I'll get into another app later that I just got her to get, because her mom has an iPad. But it's just a flashcard app. I've printed flashcards for her. I've given her copies of pages we've already done in our beginning book, and I have her go back through and write in the names of the notes, and she can do it, but when she's in the course of reading music, she's super, super slow and still makes a lot of mistakes. And she works hard. She practices 30 minutes a day and like all this stuff. So it's just another way to tackle. Sometimes we have to find multiple ways to tackle the same problem, because one way, what worked for me doesn't work for her. What works for her is not going to work for him. It's just an easy one to use for that. How many jazz players in here? Or people who call themselves kind of a jazz player sometime? Okay. If you're familiar with fake books, real books, there's an app called iReal Pro. I just found this one in January when I was at the SSBOE conference. It's awesome. It's got thousands of tunes, the chord progressions in them. Everything from basic, you can look up basic blues progression to 2-5-1s to downloading songs in all these different categories from jazz, blues, Latin, Brazilian, pop, whatever. You can change your transposition. So I wanted to play this piece in B flat or in C. You can change the tempo and the backing track style, and you play along with it. So the other day I actually used this for the first time with one of my students who's a tuba player. She plays trombone in jazz band, and she's like, I really want to play tuba in jazz band. And I said, okay, well, let's learn to walk a bass line on a 12-bar blues. And we put it on and we did it, and it was really cool. And the list of tunes that are in there is pretty extensive. You can check it out. This is another app that's kind of a similar thing, except it's more for building your own. So it's called ChordBot. And what you can do is you build progressions of chords. Now you can do that on iReal Pro. I haven't done that yet. I literally just got that app a few months ago, and I'm not a jazz player. I don't really teach jazz, so I haven't really played around with that. I know that has that function. And actually going back, one thing I forgot to tell you on iReal Pro, I didn't put it in the slideshow, is that it has a function where it can post on the bottom of the screen the scales that are suggested to go along with the chords as it's going. And you can scroll and find multiple different ones for some of the chords. The more complicated the chord gets, the more different options you have. But you can actually see, oh, on this chord, on this particular dominant seventh chord, I play a mixolydian scale. And then it goes to the next chord, oh, I see this. And it just shows you that. This one is just for building backing tracks. Basically, you pick your note, pick your chord extension, how long you want it to play, what inversion, if anything, and then it just builds a sequence here. You can pick your tempo, pick a style, and then it'll play back. And you can copy a tune that's already done. If you want to create a file, you can export as a MIDI or WAV file to send to your students. So if you're teaching jazz band and you want them to practice improvisation on a track, maybe you don't have a recording for them, you can create a simple thing for them and send them a WAV file, either put it in an email or a Dropbox or something like that, and then they can go and just practice playing on top of it. It could be something similar, like maybe we're just going to start with 5-1, or then 2-5-1, or then start adding other things, and you can build it yourself. Which is, I've used that one more. Like I said, I don't really teach jazz. It's not my thing, but I have still used that one more just because I've had that for a long time. The iReal Pro is, it's been around for a little while. I just went to a jazz clinic at SCSBOA this year where I found out about it. Like, this is the coolest app for that. But you should definitely check those out. All right, so now we get to some bigger ones. The shareable appetizers. Most of these are for, I kind of look at them for iPad in some cases because they're only iPad, in some cases just because they work bigger on a bigger screen. Yes, my students have fun with that picture. Fourscore. I use this app a lot. It is a PDF reader, just pretty much like any other, except it's built for music. So it is built to put a PDF file in, just like you would for Adobe Acrobat or whatever. And then, let's see, here we I can notate, I can put crescendos and decrescendos, I can keep my scores on here, I can turn pages just by flipping back and forth. It's really useful for, you can actually keep copies of parts for things. For example, this right here that I have on here is a parade tune I arranged. My middle school band did the Ventura County St. Patrick's Day parade about a month ago. And I wrote out a band arrangement of the song Danny Boy for them to play. So I have my score to use, but also when I'm out at the parade, I can have the parts on here. So sometimes we'll have a little section when we have some downtime, I'll just pull up a copy of the part, hold it in front of the section, like, all right, you guys don't have, they're middle schoolers. You don't have all your music perfectly memorized, let's read 4 bars at a time, and I'll blow it up. Okay? It has a built-in metronome, it has a built-in tuner, it has annotation tools for drawing crescendos and decrescendos and highlighting. As I mentioned before, I write drill for a number of high school bands. I wrote for 10 bands this year, most of which have about 3 or 4 pieces of music in their show. Last year, before I started, or 2 years ago before I started using this app, I would have about 40 scores on my desk that I had to go through all the time. Now I put them in here. If they don't email them to me, I scan them in as a PDF and I just keep it all here. So much easier, and my desk is a little bit cleaner. If you're not teaching or working in a school right now, you will find that keeping your desk clean as a music teacher is pretty much impossible. I don't know if it's the same, but the last time I was in Dr. Stoffel's office, it was pretty much, is it still like that? Stuff everywhere, right? And he's no different than most music teachers that I know. And this has saved me a ton of space, just being able to put things on this app. I use this literally a few times a week. I also keep a lot of PDFs of technique things for my private students. So like I have right here, I have the Arvin's method for cornet. A lot of this stuff is now public domain. The Blazevich studies for volume 1, volume 2. Clark technical studies, column lip flexibilities. I've got some scores. I've got Koprosh etudes. All in here. So when I'm teaching, I'm not carrying around a giant rolling thing of all this stuff. I have this. Which is nice because it keeps my car cleaner. If anyone's ever seen my car, it's usually a disaster. And then this is a new one. This is one I've been using for a while now. It's called Dictaphone. It's a recording app, just like the voice app on your phone, but it allows you to categorize and file recordings. So when I go to clinics, this is a screenshot of my iPad. CSUN Brass Clinic, CSUN this, CSUN that, CSUN this. CSUN NAfME Dr. Cross Ensemble Clinic. I just put that one in there literally today. I recorded the session and I just put it up here. I keep them all filed so I can go back and listen to them. How many of you have been to CSUN or SCSBOA conference? Okay. If you haven't, you have to trust me on this. You've got to go to these things. You will learn so much. I was talking to Dr. Reitner earlier today, and I started teaching strings about 3 years ago with only 1 semester of string methods. In the last 3 years, I've gone to SCSBOA, CSMEC, and the Midwest Clinic, and 90% of everything I go to is string clinics. I'm just trying to absorb new information and get to be where I'm not a terrible string teacher. Because I'm a brass player. I grew up in band, marching band, concert band, marching band, concert band. That was my life. And now I have to go left hand, right hand. Like, oh my gosh, it's different. And so when you're done with those days, when you go for a couple days, you are brain fried. You can't remember what you had for lunch, much less what somebody talked about. And I take notes and all that, but a lot of times it's great to come back and go, all right, I'm in the car, I want to listen to the recording, I'm going to listen to a clinic I went to. Or I just started, the first year I taught strings, and I went to some of these clinics, I started going back and listening over and over so I could reabsorb the information. So I have tons of stuff on my iPad, all separated out. I have band, strings, jazz, and sort of miscellaneous stuff that's filed on there. You can export the files, save them in Dropbox, whatever you want. This is an app I use with my private students, not so much now because they started charging for it. It's a sheet music library. It used to be like 99 cents to download it, and now it's like you have to pay, it's a lot. As a private teacher, it's like $100 a year. If you're teaching a lot, it's actually kind of worth it, but it's got all these different categories of things that you can look at. Different types of different stuff you can find for different instruments. Some of them have links to YouTube videos. That one is for the Captain America March, right? I mean, it's literally every different genre you can imagine. It's pretty cool. I find a lot of really neat stuff on there. It's just now it's about $100 a year. This app I actually found last year, after I did my presentation at SASBOA, I did an open session at the end, like, hey, anyone have any questions? Somebody mentioned this to me, and this thing is seriously a lot of fun. I mentioned a few minutes ago I have a trumpet player who's having a hard time reading music. Staff Wars is a game, it's available for iPhone too, it's just hard to play because it's small. So it's easier to do on a tablet. It is available on Android as well. And it's literally, you're blasting notes out of the sky by typing the correct name of the note. So the note starts over here and it just comes across the screen, and you have your little thing that sort of looks like an X-wing, and I go, oh, that's a D, and I hit D and it shoots it down. And it starts off super slow, and it gets faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. You can change it where it's only for a beginner, only the lines. So every good boy does fine. Only the spaces, F-A-C-E, or the whole staff, or you can add ledger lines in. You can do treble clef, you can do bass clef, you can do the grand staff, you can do alto clef. I really wish they had tenor clef, but I have used the alto clef when I started teaching strings because I can't read alto clef very well at all. So I started playing. It's addictive. I have students, once I found it, I brought it in and I put it on my iPad, and I had every class I showed it to them. And I had one or two kids come up and play it in front of everybody, and they loved it. I think last year I had like 10 kids go and get it. Staff Wars Live is another version of the same app. It's not available on Android. The Staff Wars game is. Staff Wars Live is not on Android yet. And instead of typing the name of the note in, you play it on your instrument, and it uses the microphone to recognize what you play. So you have to actually play the correct note. For brass players, that's hitting the right partial, and it has to be relatively in tune. So if you play the right fingering for a note, you're totally out of tune. It might not recognize it. It gets faster and faster and faster. On the live version, you pick your key. So I want to do B flat major, or I want to do chromatic, or I'm a beginner. I want to just start with two notes. So we're going to start with concert F and concert G. Concert F and concert E flat. Those are only those two notes. And it'll just keep going faster and faster when they play those two notes. You can add a third note. You can expand the range. It can get enough where you can put it in some keys that are more difficult. So when I first found this, I had a euphonium student a couple years ago. Absolutely phenomenal player. First chair All-State. Scholarship to Tanglewood for the summer. Great player. I put it in B major. If you're a brass player, you know B major is not a fun key. In fact, I don't think B major is a fun key for any instrument. Well, as it got up to level 10 and the notes are shooting across at random intervals, high, low, medium, and he's jumping all the way around in B major, he went nuts. And totally, that was the highest level he got on that key. But it was a lot of fun, and so he ended up getting it. It's really, like I said, it's very addictive. Both versions are 99 cents. And I showed it to my student who's having trouble reading, and her mom got it on her iPad, so we'll see how well that helps her. I know she's having fun with it. I don't know, how it has affected her yet. For those of you who are teaching, who are going to teach high school, you will probably teach marching band at some point, whether you like it or not. If you're dealing with somebody like me, a drill writer, I try to write things that make sense to people who don't necessarily. A lot of the schools I write for are in this area. A lot of my friends that I went to CSUN with ended up hiring me because they knew I wrote drill. I write for some other schools outside the area that are different varying levels of competitiveness and size. My smallest band last year had 11 wind players. The largest one I wrote for had 150 wind players. And when I write drill, how many of you are not comfortable reading a drill chart? You've never done it, or you're not really super comfortable. Maybe you kind of do it, but you can't quite figure out where things are supposed to go. This is an app that allows you to download the drill itself, not just a static printed chart, but an animated version of the chart. Now, when I write drill, I can send somebody a video animation. It's really cool now the way that they do it. It's like watching a video game march or show. And I can send that to somebody. But this allows them to go to a specific page of drill, zoom in, zoom out, tilt it to see the perspective, highlight members, see what their coordinate is, and watch the path, see how they're supposed to be moving. So if I have some really, really complicated move that I write, I try to write out the instructions, but sometimes words just don't work, and you just need to see it. And so you look at this and go, oh, cool. So I was teaching last year. I did the first week of band camp at Royal High School in Simi Valley. I've been doing their band camps for about 6 years. I write their show. And last year I had a conflict. I couldn't do the second week and knew well in advance. And I got a friend of mine who's actually the director of the middle school band that I work for. I work for him there. But at the high school, he's one of the marching instructors under me. But we've been friends for years, and I said, hey, are you available to come teach the second week of band camp, which is when they were going to be learning drill? I said, sure. But he didn't really have a lot of time to study the drill. He's a single parent with 2 kids, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to send this, download this app, send it to you. So there was a spot in the drill, he got stuck. He's like, what's going on here? And he totally forgot he had the app. And he's like, oh. So he texted me, he's like, I don't know what's going on page 10. And then I didn't get the text right away. And he's like, never mind, I looked at it. And he was able to pull up the app, look at it, and go, oh, I get it. Cool, done. And it's super cool. There is a new app that is not in this presentation. It's called Ultimate Drill Book. And it was originally a competing app from the company. Highware is the company that makes the software that I use and most drill writers write with. Ultimate Drill Book is now working with them, and it's even much more advanced and cooler than the built-in, than this particular app. I don't use it yet. I just found out about it. Your school has to get an account to use it, but your students can get it, and it shows you pretty much everything. Oh, you need to know what count this kid's crossing a yard line. You want to find a halfway point. It can do all of that. So those are really useful. When I teach drill at the high school, I still use printed charts most of the time. But when I also work 1 day a week at Westlake High School with their marching band, mostly just because I'm friends with the director, known him for years, and I love the night rehearsals, and I have all their drill on my iPad. We don't even print charts most of the time anymore. We just download it. And he loves to write things at the last minute. He runs rehearsal with his laptop, and so sometimes he'll be like, "Hey guys, I just changed page 20 and I uploaded it to Dropbox." We're like, "Oh, okay, let's go download it." And he does that sort of thing. You can put it in a solo mode where a kid can see their own drill, which is great when you have a kid who misses rehearsal and doesn't know what to do. He's like, "All right, here you go." I know bands, they actually have one of the commercials for iPad had the Ohio State Marching Band, because the entire Ohio State Marching Band owns iPads for every member, and they use this. That's a big outlay of money, but it's Ohio State. They have football money. So it's great. You can highlight a particular kid. If you want to watch, you have a kid who's missing rehearsal, and they come back, and you want to be able to watch them, you can just highlight their spot, so it shows at the top. It'll show their coordinates. You can see their name. This is actual drill from Westlake High School show. From Royal High School show last year? Yeah, last year. And that's a real kid's spot, and you can just see his coordinate and just go, okay, that's cool, we got it. Actually, this was a show 2 years ago. And it's pretty useful, especially, like I said, if you don't have a lot of experience with the marching band thing, especially as reading and teaching drill. Duet display. I use this a lot when I'm writing away from home. It allows you to use your iPad as a second monitor for a laptop or PC. Simply what it is. You plug it in and it creates it just does it here. So like for example, I was working on, we do a composition project, which I'm not going to get into here because it's a whole other session on its own, with my middle school orchestra, and they compose a piece, and so I do the orchestration and arranging of it. And I was working on it one day at Starbucks, right, after school, and so I just connect my laptop to my iPad, and I use Sibelius. So here's an individual part, here's the score, done, super easy. It's also really good if you have to do a presentation for a small group and you don't have a monitor or projector, just put your iPad, turn it around, and it works really well. All right, free stuff. Okay, the cool thing about free stuff is, one, it's free. Two, well, we really like free. Also, there's a lot of really neat ways you can think about using things you already have. Okay, the camera. Okay, using the camera is an amazing tool, and it's on everybody's phone. So obviously you can use it. This is my middle school band at their finale concert a year ago. It's our top band sitting in the middle. We put the other bands around. We do parades, so we're about to play all our parade tunes in the gym. We put this picture on we have a Facebook page. The school actually put it on their main school website, and then we found out now that our district keeps stealing our pictures to put it up on the district website too, which we're totally fine with. It's just no problem. So now a lot of schools are using, there's Instagram accounts and things like that, and you'd be surprised how you need to promote your program. Not just to show the parents what their kids are doing, but to create interest in new members, create interest in the community, which can mean funding and money and donations, because those types of things are hard to come by. And sometimes the people in your community don't get to your concerts. They don't get to a football game. They don't get to all those things, but the more you can spread photos of what you're doing and how cool it is, and I mean, that's a pretty impressive picture. That's a middle school group. Well, you show that to people, like, we have kids who go, I want to be a part of that. They don't know what band is when they're in like 3rd grade, 4th grade. I mean, we have the elementary band in our district, but it's fairly small, and sometimes kids don't join because they don't want to give up their lunch, because it's during lunch a lot of time. And then they come in, they see this, and they're like, wow, that's pretty cool, and the parents see it. Using the camera, a lot of times I will put my phone or my iPad on a stand to use as a mirror. Using a mirror is a great tool when you're teaching an instrument because they can see, especially you can see embouchure, you can see placement, you can see all sorts of things. We don't always have access to a mirror. The high school band room where I work has a full-length mirror. The entire wall is a mirror. And it was originally put in for the kids to use for marching band. But it's great, but I can't always set up right next to it because of the percussion. So sometimes I'll just put my phone or my iPad in selfie mode. So obviously this is a rather goofy tuba player, but she's a tuba player, so that's normal. What's wrong? What's wrong in the picture? Besides her eyes being cross-eyed.
Placement of the mouthpiece.
What's that?
Placement of the mouthpiece.
Placement of the mouthpiece. It's off to the side, right? When she was a beginner, she's now a freshman at Westlake High School, but when she was in beginning band, her band director, they didn't have enough music stands, and she had to share a stand. And as a tuba player, there's not a lot of space, so she got in the habit of looking off to the side all the time, and she created this habit for herself every day of playing off-center. And I've been working on we work in lessons on trying to fix the problem, but then she sees, she goes back and plays for 5 days a week in class, and it's really, really difficult for her to break that habit. And now she's a very advanced all-state level player, but it's affecting her and some of her, like her pedal range and things like that. But she gave me permission to use that picture. She was being goofy while I was trying to show her, and so I just reached over and snapped the shot. But it's great, you can give immediate visual feedback. I use it in marching band sometimes. I'll have a kid who's standing like this. I'm like, hey, stand up straight. They go, I am. So I go, all right, click. This is what you look like. Oh, Or the kid, come on, get your trumpet up. It is. No, it's not. Get your legs straight when you're marching backwards. They are. No, it's not. And I'll use the video version. And the fun thing that I like to do with them, especially, is I let them be the one to press the delete key. I generally don't keep the pictures and videos unless they give me permission to, but I let them be the one to do it. They like doing that. Show students the consequences of improper maintenance. This is actually an old picture. That was inside a French horn mouthpiece. It's middle school kids, and one of our band classes is right after lunch, and I can guarantee you your kids are not going to brush their teeth. When I was here, we had one trombone player who used to brush his teeth before one ensemble every day. I think he was the only one I've ever seen. That kid came up to me, he's like, Mr. Fried, I can't get any air through my horn. He literally couldn't get any air through the mouthpiece, so that was a swab out from that. I took the picture for posterity. This was a bassoonry last year. The kids stored it in the little plastic container that it comes with, which you're not supposed to do, because there's no air circulation, it doesn't dry out. So it became brown and black and fuzzy. Pretty gross. And then you could also show them what not to do with their instrument. Check that out. This is a little hard to see on here. That's all broken. This was last night. And that's not a student. That's the Boston Pops Orchestra. So I went to a concert last night. The Boston Pops played in Thousand Oaks. They did an all John Williams program. And at the end of the program, as an encore, they played the Cantina Band. And the bass players, everybody's having fun. They're like, the trumpet players are standing up. They are just going to town on this piece. And right at the end, the bass player spins his bass around. And it hit the chair. And I don't know if you can see, but it's all cracked back here, totally cracked down the side. And the Boston Pops, they gave us free tickets for all our orchestra students, so I got to go for free. So I was sitting with a bass player and a bunch of violinists, and they all went, oh! And that was all we were talking about on the way out of the concert. It was like, that can't be cheap. And the guy said afterwards, he let me take a picture, but he said that he's been doing this for 40 years, and that's never happened. It was a concert on Friday the 13th. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But I will show that to students forever. This is what can happen if you do the wrong thing with your instrument, right?
Even a professional.
I use this, again, I mentioned marching band. Rehearsal videos. My high school band, every year we create a Facebook page for the current members. It's a hidden page so no one else can join. And we post videos from rehearsal all the time. So the kids can see what the rehearsal looked like, what it sounded like, what was the show. I mean, the show videos tend to be on YouTube and stuff like that. We actually have a parent right now who has a really good camera and gets great video. But we post it in Dropbox for them or on a Facebook page. Some people use Instagram, things like that. But you can get a lot of feedback to a student in video that words just doesn't convey really well. They don't necessarily believe you, okay? But you show them a picture, you show them a video, and it really works. You can do private YouTube channels, you can use private Facebook pages, things like that. The way I do it at the high school, we have a private Facebook page every year, and there's multiple staff members on there as moderators, and to make sure that there's good oversight of everything that's said and done, and there's nothing like, you know, that you have to worry about in terms of commentary. We do ask the kids sometimes to feedback. I know there's a couple people here who went to El Camino Real High School in Woodland Hills, and their color guard has, they have an amazing color guard program, and they are given video assignments all the time. All right, everyone, by this day you need to post this technique on your Facebook page. And they're very competitive, so the students do it or they're gone. They're actually in Dayton, Ohio right now, competing in the Winter Color Guard Championships. So there's a lot of really neat ways you can do that. Google Translate, it's a free app. How many of you carry a music dictionary with you? Cool. Like 4 or 5 people, Dr. Weiner does. Google Translate, you set it in Italian or German, and check out not only what words mean with the original translation. For example, a lot of times people don't know what's the difference between allargano, ritardano, and rallentando. That's the actual translation. So you go, oh, that's really cool. And it's free. And then, you know, if you need to use other phrases, tell the tuba player to wake up, whatever. Which, I kid you not, last week I was here for Claudio Alcantara's conducting recital. I walked into the CSUN Youth Orchestra rehearsal just to pop my head in. The tuba player happens to be my private student, and she was sleeping on her tuba. She went for spring break to France, and she was jet lagged, and she hadn't played in 30 minutes in rehearsal. Make rehearsal files. So I do this at the high school. We take our music for the marching band is written in Finale, and I don't write it. I take the Finale file and I chop it up. So instead of learning to just a metronome sometimes, we put on the recording of that chunk of drill. All right, guys, here's the first 16 counts of music, and it has a click on it, but they're learning to the music. And then, so we'll have, all right, here's page 1 to 2, and the whole, page 2 to 3, page 3 to 4, page 4 to 5. And here's big chunks. And the great thing about it is when you actually, you learn your drill, you bring out your instruments, and you're like, all right, let's start putting the music to drill. The kids already know what part of the music goes with each page. Because if you've ever taught marching band, a lot of times there is that confusion. Which bar are we on? Where does this start, right? They've already learned it. They've done lots and lots of reps, because there's always a little bit of time where you've learned the drill, and then you're learning the music, there's a little time before you put it together. Except they've already heard it multiple times, they already know. So it takes some time, there's a setup process. In the handout on the online version, I did create a hyperlink to a document that I created on how to do that in both Sibelius and in Finale. What I do now is I actually do it in Sibelius, I just export it from Finale, because I have both, but I don't like Finale. So I created, it's a long process to explain, but there's a document for either one. It's a few years old, so it's an older version of the software, but the basics should be basically the same. And you're more than welcome to just click on that link and check out that document. Create warm-up tracks. So I actually have, these are things I buzz along to, I have my private students buzz along to, and they're posted on our middle school band webpage. So kids can get the brass players buzzing along, or wind players you know, playing along on their instrument. Percussionists, we make them sing along. Why? Because they got to tune a timpani at some point, right? So the more that they can match pitch and sing, the better. I actually originally started it, I had a student who was an extremely slow learner, and I was trying to figure out some different approaches to take with him as a private student that were, you know, just reinforcing things when I wasn't there. I did it, and then after I did it, I keep these on my iPhone, and I buzz in the car. I have a mouthpiece in the car all the time, and I sit in traffic all the time. So I just have them with me. They're basic things to use. Like I said, we post them on the middle school band page. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. If you use Dropbox, you can put in their Dropbox file, post them on the website, give kids links to them, whatever you need. They're extremely useful. I mean, even for me, just to keep my chops going. I used to teach, for a while I was teaching in the middle school, and I would get in the car and come straight over to wind ensemble here. And I didn't have time, I would walk in wind ensemble without much warm-up time, but by the time I got here, I had already been buzzing for like 30 minutes. I was fine. So it was really, really helpful. So with all that stuff being said, every now and then we need a little something to keep us entertained, because if you've been around students, you need to go and like let off some steam.
Oh.
This is a game for iPad called Marching Band versus Zombies. It's actually for iPhone also. This is Ben 10 Hut. Literally, you kill zombies with musical notes. If your shield that you get is sunscreen. If you find a sunscreen bottle, it's your shield. And water bottles are your power-ups. It's like a 1980s style video game. It's like 99 cents and it's stupid and it's fun and it keeps you entertained. So, does anybody have any questions about anything or anything they'd like to suggest or add out of their own experience? A lot of this it's playing around with things and figuring out how can you do it in your setup. Everybody's technology setup at their school is different, or complete lack of technology. Every student, I did an informal poll last week. My beginning band, our school's demographic is changing. Thousand Oaks used to be, our middle school and our high school used to be primarily Caucasian and some Asian with an occasional African American kid and occasional Hispanic kid. Our beginning band is, this year is about 60% Hispanic kids, lower socioeconomic group than we're used to. We're not used to having kids that don't speak English in our school, which is the first time that's happened this year. It's changing. And it's something we actually are having to adapt to. We're not trying to come on them, it's the situation. So we're adapting how we change and how we teach. Some of the students don't have money for reads and things like that, and that's new for us because our area has been primarily an upper middle class area where we've had money for whatever we need. But almost every kid, I think I did a poll and 75% of the kids had a smartphone. They can't buy reads, they can't buy a mouthpiece, but they have an iPhone or an Android. So it's a tool that we can say, you know what, go do this. We don't have, some schools are one-to-one with iPads and things like that, or Chromebooks and things like that now. Our school is not, but they do have iPads for all the kids who are in the ELD program, all the English language learners, and they have some apps on there. So we had a new trombone student come in after winter break, which is super late. The counselors talked to us. Our counselors are really good. They're like, he really wants to be in band. He's a hard worker. He's in the English language program. His English is actually fine. I mean, he's okay. He's a little bit slow at picking up, but we were able to get some of those apps. I put the Staff Wars game on his iPad that he has through the ELD program so he can start learning to read music. And we gave him a couple other things to help him out with that. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you guys have done in the past or seen other people do, please share, because that's what this is really all about. Any? Yes?
So in the marching band field, if you're managing the battery, you know how important it is to make sure that everyone's having the same stick heights, that everything's clean. What I've seen some people do is film the rep.
Slow motion?
Yeah, use slow motion to work out all the ticks.
I did that for the first time. Somebody else, a student who's from UCLA here. You guys know Vivian?
Yeah.
Player? So I work with her at Westlake High School. And one day she was there and they were just taking video of people's feet in slow motion. And it's just like, hey, your feet are out of time. Because it's really hard on a fast video to see if something's like perfect, like you said, stick heights. But you put it in slow motion, oh, you can see everything. It's a great tool. I never even thought of doing that until this past year. I'm like, oh my God, that's great. Slow motion, it's beautiful. But yeah, checking percussion stick heights. And even technique. If you're not, there are some schools that don't have a big budget for staff. And what they'll do is they'll bring in staff members for band camp. Right? Just hire them for band camp and then they're kind of on their own. That's a little bit rough sometimes, but you know what? If somebody knows what something's supposed to look like, and then you show them the video, if they know what it's supposed to look like, they can be their own critique. Oh, you know what? My fingers were off, my back fingers were off the stick when they should have been on the stick. Or my elbows are up too high, or my horn angle is not right. They can be their own critique. So that's a great one. Any others? Going once? Going twice? Sold. If you have any questions afterwards, let me know.